This is Mac OS Ken.
A shift in iPhone expectations, tracking growth in the App Store, and Wolves seems to have worked well for Apple TV Plus. It is Thursday, the 3rd of October, 2024. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by 1Password Extended Access Management, your solution for MDM and identity and access management. Learn more at onepassword.com/macOSKen. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. Apple 3.0 says JP Morgan analyst Samik Chatterjee has lowered his iPhone expectations, though sounds like pushed out expectations might have worked as well. For the rest of the year, he's expecting lower sales. According to a note sent Wednesday, he and his now expect aggregate iPhone volumes to track at about 126 million from July through year's end. That's versus comparable sales a year ago of about 132 million and lower than previous expectations of about 130 million. Not surprisingly, it is this year's shorter wait times that have Mr. Chatterjee reconsidering. Quoting his note, the difference in the lead times relative to prior years in the early weeks points to a more muted momentum in early orders for Pro models relative to our original expectations, likely due to the unavailability of AI capabilities, with consumers likely delaying purchases until the features are available and the value proposition is better understood. Blah, blah, blah. We don't know why wait times are shorter. Blah, blah, blah. Why would I say Apple 3.0 might have said Chatterjee pushed out expectations instead? Because he did. The analyst says his team's expectations for a robust AI cycle in the medium term remain unchanged, and that the revision in their near-term estimates only represents a modest push-out from volumes to later in the cycle. The way he and his see it, Apple Intelligence will prompt a robust, multi-year AI upgrade cycle, presenting solid upside opportunity for the shares. Eventually. Mr. Chatterjee has an overweight rating on Apple's shares. He's got a pushed-out price target on the shares of $265. Set in May, he had expected Apple to hit that price by the end of this year. This is now his stated price target for the end of 2025. We did uncertainty pretty hard yesterday, so much so that I intentionally left one story out. Did you hear about the fire at the iPhone factory in India? Well, there was one, and it may cause Apple to shift some of its production plans. According to a piece from Apple Insider, an iPhone factory in Tamil Nadu has been closed indefinitely after a fire. Originally owned by Pegatron, now in the hands of Tata, it's not quite right to say that it's an iPhone factory. Rather, it makes back panels for iPhone 14 and iPhone 15. While it's likely better for Apple that the factory in question has nothing to do with iPhone 16, they are still models Apple is trying to sell. The piece has counterpoint research indicating that the plant closure could lead to a shortfall of 1.5 million units. Apple Insider says Apple usually runs with about 8 weeks worth of components stockpiled. Possible options going forward include getting the plant reopened relatively quickly, moving production of those back panels back to China, or running sales of the affected models with tighter supply. Uncertainty. BofA analyst Wamsi Mohan has cast his eye on Apple services. Seeking Alpha had Mr. Mohan posting a note this week, guesstimating revenue for the store for the recently ended fourth quarter of fiscal year 24. Judging by data from Sensor Tower, App Store revenue grew 13.6% for Q4 24 versus the same quarter a year earlier, coming in at $7.8 billion. App Store revenue in China grew 6% year-on-year. Gaming revenue grew 6% to $3.9 billion. Gaming revenue was flat in China, rising 0.2%, according to the note. Gaming is still the biggest breadwinner in the App Store, accounting for 50% of revenue last quarter. That was down from 54% from the same quarter a year earlier. And finally, downloads from the App Store for iPhone and iPad grew 5.5% year-on-year, hitting a total of 8.9 billion downloads. Mr. Mohan has a buy rating on Apple shares. His price target on the shares is $256. Apple's got a date in the new year with the National Labor Relations Board, or NLRB. Apple Insider says the organization on Monday filed a complaint against the Cupertino company. Citing a Reuters report, the piece says Apple stands accused of interfering with, restraining, and coercing employees in the exercise of their rights under federal labor law. According to Apple Insider, the NLRB says the company required its employees to sign illegal confidentiality, non-compete, and non-disclosure agreements. The complaint also alleges that Apple over-enforced social media and misconduct policies on its employees. The two sides are set to be heard by an administrative judge in January. It appears that Apple has no plans on settling the case, according to Apple Insider, and instead intends to share the facts at the hearing. More news in a moment, but first a word from today's sponsor, 1Password Extended Access Management. Whether it's laying a path or laying out a process, people won't always go the way you want them to go, and won't always work the way you want them to work. Oh, sure, they'll get the job done, but they may cut corners in the process. It's not necessarily about being lazy. It's about finding ways to work that are easier, more productive. Nothing wrong with that, unless it puts your business at risk. Using devices that haven't been vetted, running apps IT can't keep an eye on, maybe using employee IDs made for a contractor years ago. You don't want to stand over their shoulder, but those are the kinds of things about which you need to know. And 1Password Extended Access Management can help. It puts all those unmanaged devices, unknown applications, and rogue identities under your control, making sure every user credential is strong and protected, every device is known and healthy, and every app is visible. 1Password Extended Access Management solves the problems traditional identity and access management and mobile device management miss. It is security for the way people work today. It's available now to companies with Okta and Microsoft Entra, and in beta for Google Workspace customers. Check it out at the number 1password.com/macOSKen. That is the number 1password.com/macOSKen. Transcripts in Apple Podcasts are picking up a few new languages. iDownload blog says Apple will soon start gradually expanding transcriptions for podcasts spoken in Brazilian Portuguese, Danish, Dutch, Finnish, Italian, Norwegian, Portuguese, and Swedish. They'll join podcasts in English, French, German, and Spanish, according to the report. It looks like happy days for Apple TV+. A report from the entertainment site Deadline says the almost straight-to-streaming release of the George Clooney, Brad Pitt action comedy Wolves went gangbusters for the Cupertino streamer. Not that you'll hear numbers from Apple. Apple doesn't break out specifics, says Deadline. That said, the site says the film reportedly boosted viewership by nearly 30% week over week on the service. It premiered on Apple TV Plus on the 27th of September in more than 100 countries. The film created the biggest viewership spikes in the US, UK, Canada, Australia, Italy, Mexico, Brazil, and Germany. While Apple does not part with numbers, it will make with the hoopla. Apple Original Films head of features Matt Dentler was quoted in Deadline saying, "Audiences have chosen in droves to make Wolves part of their weekend, making the movie a global blockbuster. We always consider Apple TV Plus to be the home for the world's most talented artists to create and deliver their best work, and it's exciting to see audiences embrace that so overwhelmingly." It sounds like Apple's next big picture may get a little more time on the big screen. Either that or just a bigger build-up. Deadline says Oscar-winning director Steve McQueen's Blitz will hit the big screen on the 1st of November. It won't show up on Apple TV Plus until the 22nd of the month. Fans of the Apple TV Plus detective drama Sugar have reason to be happy. The Cupertino streamer issued a press release Wednesday announcing a second season for the gritty Colin Farrell series. I have this thing where I usually wait until the show is done with a full season before I start watching it. Then I tend to forget the show even happened. I say all of that to let you know why I am not going to tell you what's happening in Season 2. I skimmed the press release and wish I hadn't, since I saw something that I'm not sure but could be a spoiler, maybe. Colin Farrell, the showrunner, and the producers will be back for Sugar Season 2. No word on when that will hit. And finally today, the next Apple Watch Activity Challenge could just as easily be called an inactivity challenge. Depends on how you approach mindfulness. Mac Rumor says Apple is celebrating Mindful Month through its wearable. Set for the 10th of October, Apple will encourage participants to bring awareness to all the ways we can take care of our mental health. On the 10th of October, record 10 mindful minutes with any app that adds to health to get this award. This award being the usual animated stickers for messages and a virtual doodad. I gotta say, Mindful Month, Cybersecurity Awareness Month, Halloween, Inktober. There is a lot happening or being in this month. We should move one or two of these things to August, which pretty much has nothing going on. I say Inktober. Let's move Inktober to August, which we should maybe start calling Ogtober. I may need to workshop this a bit. macOS Can, brought to you by me, and sponsored by 1Password Extended Access Management. Learn more at 1password.com/macOScan. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOScan. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media. Online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. info@macoscan.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.